Is it time to unlock the great leader within you? In this video, we're going to share some of the key principles and elements that it takes to go from a good leader to a great leader. Get ready to redefine leadership, cultivate your team, and create a legacy of success. Regardless of where you are right now, I hope you already consider yourself a good leader. You're here, you're learning, you're wanting to grow, and that literally proves to me that you are the leader that the world needs now more than ever. But there are some things that separate a good leader from a great one, and we're going to dive into those elements for you today. Now, this all starts out with, how do you define what leadership is? For me personally, it's not about rank. It's not about how long you've been there. It's not about how much money you make or even how much you know. It's about your ability to influence others to take action. And not just take any action, but actions that benefit the people that you're actually leading. Now, we're going to dive into all the key qualities today, but first we need to talk about the different leadership styles that many different leaders employ.
Now, there are many different leadership styles, but I'm just going to talk about a few of them. One is simply you just tell people what to do. Those are the leaders that make all the decisions and they disseminate that information to their team. Another is one that asks questions, that gets the team involved, that asks them what they think they should do. And it's more of a team effort. Another is the leader that actually puts out that vision and really inspires and motivates their team to work towards that vision. Now, I want to give you an example of a leadership style that's most effective. This one is the one that gets the team involved, that asks the questions. Now, let's say you have a particular project and you need all hands on deck. You start to facilitate a conversation among the team. You want to get their input, their feedback, and you work together towards that project. This is a really effective leadership style because you get people's buy-in and they're much more likely to take action.
Now, there isn't a right or wrong leadership strategy. We just wanted to share some of the key ones. But you're going to realize that you typically will lean into one more than the others, but you can definitely use an array of all of them depending on the situation that you're in. Now, with that being said, let's dive into these key elements from what separates a great leader from a good one. The first quality is how quickly and how well do they overcome challenges. As a leader, you're going to face challenges daily. That's probably actually the reason why you're a leader today, because you're willing to lean into those challenges and become stronger on the other end. Some of the more common challenges: having people who don't agree with you, having people bring negative energy into the team, having disagreements within the team that actually pushes the team further apart, and making key decisions when you don't have all the information. Now, I want to share a personal story with you. This is back when I was a sergeant for the LAPD. We had this training, and in the training, it paired me with some veteran officers, as well as some new officers who had just joined the department. Now, we were in training, and this was a scenario, but the goal was to safely navigate a vehicle pursuit and take the suspects into custody. Now, this is something that I'd personally done hundreds of times, and some of the veterans there, thousands. But in this scenario, after we pulled the suspect over and we were getting ready to approach the vehicle, one of the new officers stepped up and said, "Sarge, I really don't feel like we should approach the vehicle like how we normally do." I remember at that time, some of the veteran officers turned around. I could hear them uttering, "Hey, newbie, just let us take charge and we'll figure this out." Then everybody turned around to me to ask me, what is it I wanted to do? Now, it would have been very easy for me to lean into the veteran officers and just follow their lead. But the new officer might have had a different perspective because he was on a different side of the situation. And I asked him a few questions to help verbalize to see if maybe he had some more information that the rest of the team didn't. And the truth was he did. After having that conversation with him, I decided it would be best to actually approach from the side because there was a lot of blind spots if we had approached like how we always did. So we executed that plan and we actually accomplished the mission in the most safest way possible. What we didn't know is there was actually a suspect hiding in the trunk, and if we had approached from the back, we would have been blindsided. But because I was willing to see it from a different person's perspective, it changed the game for me. Now, afterwards, I remember the instructor coming up and asking me, "Why is it that you listened to the junior officer?" He said that they had been putting people through this scenario multiple times, and everybody would continue to approach the same way, even when given advice by other officers. The only way that I could explain it is that I wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page, that everybody was able to share their perspective, and no one perspective was more important than the others. And by doing so, it gave us valuable information to help us overcome that obstacle in the safest way possible. Now, as a leader, you may not be put in that same situation. Many times other people's lives would depend on me, but it doesn't mean that those situations are any less important. They're extremely critical. Remember, as a leader, it's the most difficult times that actually earn us the right to lead and influence others. So the difference between a good and great leader is, are they willing to lean in and to get through that obstacle and come out stronger on the other end?
Another thing is leaders have to get great at motivating others. So how do you motivate team members who have different motivations? Well, you figure out what motivates them. You do that by asking questions, but you can also do that by paying attention. Pay attention to their surroundings. Do they have pictures of their family on their desk? Do they get excited about certain projects or tasks? There are also strategies that can help you maintain a high morale within your team. And that is by creating an environment where they feel comfortable sharing their feedback, their opinions, their perspectives. People just want to be heard. So if you create an environment that allows for that, then that can create a high level of motivation.
The third element is they have to get great at communicating well with others. Remember that everybody sees things through their own lens. And so when you're communicating as a leader, you have to be willing to see it through the other person's lens. What I found is when you get really great at doing that, you actually can start asking questions so they can start seeing it through other people's lenses as well. That's why it's so important to make sure you communicate, you use the right words, and you avoid certain words that can actually demotivate or disconnect the team. Now, we have an entire video that we did on that, how leaders speak so others will listen, but just be very cautious of the words that you use. Another piece to communication is, are you curious about what the other person is saying? Or do you have your own opinions and ideas and you're just trying to guide them along the path? For me personally, it always helps to be curious because you can't be angry and curious, just like you can't be happy and sad at the same time. And so when I put my curiosity hat on, I put on my life coaching hat, it gives me the ability of getting curious and it helps me develop an even better communication skill, which is called listening.
Great leaders also get better at making decisions, especially the difficult ones. So how do they approach making difficult decisions? First, they'll take themselves emotionally out of those situations. They don't think about how they're going to feel. They don't think about how others are going to see them. They approach the situation, taking themselves out of the equation. So what happens if the decision doesn't go as planned? Well, this is how great leaders handle repercussion. They learn from them so that they don't repeat the same mistake next time.
Great leaders also get better at building trust and credibility. How they do this is they lean into their real and authentic self. They don't try to be like anyone else. Yes, they share their strengths, but they also share some of their vulnerabilities with the team. They make sure that people know that they're humans too. Another way they do this is they follow through on their promises by taking action, and they're willing to put themselves out there on the front lines. This is what we call modeling the behavior for others, taking the actions that we want to see them take. If you haven't built up that level of credibility, keep trying. This is not something that happens overnight. It's something you have to be willing to do over and over to get them to build that trust and know that you have their best interest in mind. The next thing that great leaders do is they get better at adapting to change. Change is never a fun thing in the moment, but it's also the greatest opportunities that we have as leaders because change is inevitable. It's how quickly we adjust, adapt, and overcome that benefits the entire team. The more that we try to push back against it or even ignore it, the harder it's going to be to actually make them opportunities instead of setbacks. I want to give an example of a change that we've all experienced recently, and that's the pandemic. When things started to shut down, when we weren't able to meet in person, a lot of things changed. And I noticed that certain businesses actually had to shut down because they tried to continue to force what they had always been doing. But the ones who adapted, the ones who changed, the ones who, despite it being a terrible situation, found opportunities, those are the businesses that really shined. They made a huge impact in the world, and because of that, they grew pretty quickly. This is the power of leaders if we're willing to quickly adapt to change.
Great leaders continue to develop and grow as leaders. They're constantly on a personal growth journey. I know that early on when I started my personal growth journey, I was focusing more on my weaknesses, what I wasn't good at so I could develop those. However, what I do now is I focus on my strengths. I look to see what I'm already good at and try to get better in those areas. Really, it's just like this video. You want to go from good to great. They also understand that even though they're leaders, they need mentors and role models because they know that those people have already gone the path that they're trying to go towards, and they can learn. They can learn from their mistakes and from their successes.
Great leaders also prioritize leadership ethics. That means they do the right things even when no one is watching. If there's any advice that I could give leaders that could help themselves and others show up even more, it's to practice this yourself. And it's not during the easy times, but during the hard ones. When it's much easier for you to do one thing, instead doing the other thing because you said you were going to do that. Every single time that you take an action that you promised yourself you would, you put a checkbox in your leadership confidence. And the more you do that, the higher your energy will be, and then other people will start taking those actions too.
Now I want to give you a little piece of advice for those of you who are aspiring to become leaders. The most important piece of information that I could give you is to find opportunities to be a leader. Take that initiative. Like Mark said earlier, you don't have to have the position or know everything to be a leader. You're already a leader.
So what does the future of great leadership look like? It looks like adapting, leaning into the challenges and making them opportunities, and maintaining your integrity at all costs. Now, one of the things we didn't talk about is the difference between a leader and a follower. I actually found that the best leaders are also the best followers as well. But you have to make sure that you do the right one in the right time. And that's actually why we made you this next video. We want to share the difference between being a creator and a consumer, or basically the difference between being a leader and a follower. You definitely don't want to get these two times mixed up. And we also want to thank you for being here. You are the leader that the world needs now more than ever. Thank you for leaning in and proving that you have all it takes to become great. Thank you for what you do out there every single day, and keep leading from the front. Bye.